I was asked this question. Is it possible to sell your soul to the devil? Here's what I'll tell you. You can't sell it, but you can choose to lease it out. In other words, what this means is that you can give your soul to a specific, powerful being so that it can utilize and harness the abilities of your soul for its own purposes. Temporarily, by earthly standards, could mean millions of years. But the point is, it's impossible to do this forever. Because you can't give a piece of the infinitely eternal to someone who is also a piece of the infinitely eternal. What is the point of consciously selling your soul anyway? The essence is that a person enters into a kind of contract with a dark entity. By the way, this doesn't necessarily look like a full-blown ritual. Sometimes it can simply be a mental agreement to such an arrangement. So, what occurs during the moment when a soul is sold to the devil? The outcome depends entirely upon which devil you made the contract with and the specific conditions and terms you agreed to. The contract is about taking into account the interests of both parties, but the entity is usually smarter and more cunning, so the person ends up paying much more. Here's an example of such a contract. A person wishes for worldwide fame, glory, and money for anything they want, and they get all of it. They live like that for 10 years or 20 years, but then the payment finally begins. To explain this process in a way that is simple and clear, the nature of the payment is that the entity wants to get as much energy as possible, to significantly increase its own level of power. This energy is often fed to the entity through a stream of endless and intense suffering. The payment may not only be made in this life. A person might even live their entire life, just the way they wanted, living as happily as they possibly can. But after that, their soul faces a period of genuine torment. All of us are playing one massive and beautiful game together. For self-discovery and gaining experience, every entity, every person plays their own role. And everyone chooses for themselves which path to take. I think that's great, no matter what that path is. Where do you want to start? What are your thoughts? Maybe you could tell us, who is he really? The devil?
Even in this reel, she says there are different kinds of devils, and that's already very good. That's really quite remarkably high quality. In other words, she doesn't limit or restrict the audience's perception to the simplistic idea that there's just one single devil who buys up all the souls. That's exactly right. Yes, there are various entities, there are complex structures, and there are powerful forces that take certain precious things from us. And sometimes this happens as an exchange for something, and sometimes you just give it away out of ignorance. They just scam you like con artists who swindle people out of their money. In the same way, these entities swindle people out of a certain resource. This can happen in your thoughts without any rituals at all. Yes, it can. If in your mind you allow it, if you agree to it, then it happens. That is, you're not just agreeing with thin air. There is a certain entity present which at that moment is making this agreement with you. There are complex systems and structures that deliberately deceive you, making you say out loud the things that are advantageous to the structure, implying that you are giving everything away for free. And in doing so, you lose exactly what, in this video, is referred to as the soul. But this is absolutely incorrect. That is not the exact terminology we can use. We cannot simply surrender or relinquish our soul because we do not have any real authority or control over its destiny. You see what I mean? It's like, it is a part of our being that is so incredibly powerful that we have absolutely no way to even cause it any harm, and the thought of giving it away to someone else is something we can hardly imagine. It's not so easy to accept this now, under the influence of Christianity, under the influence of the concept of sinfulness, under the influence of everything else. In other words, all these systems that have been imposed on us from the outside. But let me repeat once more, so that it can be heard clearly. We cannot sell our soul. No, we simply don't have that ability or function. We cannot harm it, and no one else can harm it either. Because the very nature of our soul is primordial. Try to harm the source itself. How would you do that? You can't. It's the same as trying to cause any real damage to the sun with a toothpick. Just imagine trying to get close enough to poke it with that toothpick. In other words, it's a completely different matter. But if we return to the topic of our conversation, what can we actually lose? And here, if we step back from the technicalities of terminology and activate our inner sense of perception, Yes, a person possesses a distinct and powerful energetic substance that inherently belongs to their being. And in my specific system of knowledge, it is formally called will. That very free will, that same powerful energy that enables us to move forward independently, that permits us to follow our own unique path, that empowers us to fully express our individuality, our deepest needs, our heartfelt desires, and our true intentions. This is the energy of will. It is located in the lower part of our abdomen. It appears to be a very dense, gel-like substance. From this specific central point, you can see how this powerful energy can spread out and radiate across the entire surrounding area. It can influence the world. It can pull us in the direction that we ourselves determine. But we cannot determine that ourselves if we have given this energy away to someone else. She put it very well. We cannot sell it, but we can lease it out. That, accordingly, matches reality. That is essentially how the situation works. We can choose to surrender our will to a specific structure or perhaps to some higher being. This being might deceive us, or alternatively, this being could establish a mutually beneficial contract with us. It happens in many different and complex ways. There is a well-known phrase that is very often heard. Let your will be done in everything. I might not say it exactly right, but the main thing is the essence. Have you ever thought about the meaning of all this? But this is exactly the kind of contract that actually deprives you of your will. And it's not God who takes away your will, but rather you are deprived of your will. Given the very structure, the system, that you have come to say this to, an individual person can lose this energy. When a person is completely deprived of this energy, they eventually lose the ability to move independently. From now on, he will only move in the way he is allowed or permitted to. And a person cannot endure such restriction for long, morally speaking. It's psychologically impossible. That is to say, when you are stripped of the possibility of freedom, when you lose every chance for independence, and when you are perpetually held back on a very tight leash, you eventually go insane. And no amount of external benefits can ever make up for that loss. Not even close, actually. That's exactly how it is. How many stories are there of unfortunate girls who agreed to become someone's property? Some oligarch sheikh billionaire who would lock them up in a gilded cage. And how they would later run away from there with all their might, not caring at all about the gold, the diamonds, the cars, or any of the luxuries. They simply couldn't handle it psychologically because freedom is necessary. The person cannot live without it. That's just human nature. Only a lifeless corpse can agree to live without freedom. And so, when a person, by making this specific choice, yes, surrenders their own personal will, yes, they can't sell it, but they can give it away, and stays in that state for some time, they realize, they feel, they experience that it's impossible to continue working and functioning like that. Impossible to keep living like that. He doesn't want that. He's ready to lose everything just to get back that very thing. Something unclear, something he can't quite grasp, but something he desperately needs. In most cases, this is called the soul. But the soul is a little different. It's the will, it's the energy that we have inside us here. It's the energy that allows us to express ourselves. You know, quite often on the internet, you can find things like, I want self-development, or I want to realize myself. These are such abstract words, but they're directly connected to willpower. I want to self-actualize. How? Well, I don't know how, I just want it. So this is, once again, a request for freedom, for the right to choose, the right to act, the right to desire, the right to achieve, the right to create, the right to destroy. All of this comes through energy, willpower. But yours has been taken away, and it seems like you have the rights, but you have no opportunities. That's it, you're on a leash. And when people are on a leash, they really go crazy. That's exactly right.
Listen, what about people who don't know what they want? Could that be? Is it connected to the fact that their will has also been taken away, that they're also under some kind of contracts? Because there are so many people like that who say, I don't know what I want, I don't know how to realize myself, I don't know what kind of partner I want. So basically, they have no idea what they want at all. This is also connected to that energy you're talking about?
People who don't know what they want aren't needed by anyone. Let's be honest. People who strive for something fall into traps, of which there are many. People who are expressive, active. That's why when a person projects that they don't know anything, don't do this, don't do that, they become invisible to the world around them. They practically don't exist. A person who has fallen into this trap was still striving for something, they still wanted something. Girls who end up in the golden cage, they want to live a rich and luxurious life and they strive for it. They don't just sit still. Those individuals who fall into religious bondage, some strive to improve their physical health, some strive to be saved, some genuinely think about the fact that they will die and they want to end up in a place of eternal peace. In other words, they are striving for something, they are constantly moving forward, they are going somewhere, but they end up in a trap. So, not me. And people who have fallen into this trap are not in a state of, I don't know what to do. They simply do exactly what they were made to do. And they do not have even the slightest chance to resist until they finally regain their own will. You know, there was this movie, I can't quite recall the name of it right now, but it was a really cool film. The point of it was, what happened to the person? Tiny robots, nanobots, would enter a person's brain and the person would lose control over their body. These people would become characters in the game for a while. They were paid money for it. But being characters in the game, they didn't control their own bodies. Their bodies were controlled by players, other people, users who paid for it. These people, they were like actors, but not actors who act on their own, actors who are controlled by someone else, by another person through computer systems. I can't remember what that movie was called, but it's very similar to what we're talking about now. Basically, you hand over control of yourself to other entities, and they control you, they move you around. At the same time, you feel everything, you're fully aware, but you can't do anything about it. So these actors in the computer game, the ones who were inhabited, these nanobots in the brain, they could feel everything perfectly well. Their minds weren't switched off. They could see everything clearly, they could think, but they couldn't control their own bodies. Control was taken over by another person. Yes, they were paid a salary for it, but they were in very strange, critical states, if you can put it that way. It's the same thing here. Control over you is taken by another system, to which you surrender your mind. You're fully aware of everything, but you can't do anything. And it will control you. You will perform actions that you might not want to do, that you don't want to take part in. But you will do it. Because that's it. You no longer have self-control. You have no way to manage yourself. And even if at that moment you are showered with all kinds of material goods, it's far from certain that you will be satisfied with it. Far from certain. That's why, yes, after living in this mode for some time, a person begins to suffer. But they suffer not because someone is making them suffer, but because you are mentally unprepared for not being in control of yourself. You're just like a puppet, moving wherever you're directed, regardless of how you feel about it or what you experience in the process. This is a very sad situation, and many people find themselves in this situation. It is possible to get out of this situation. For example, in my practice, I have methods to reclaim your will, to take it back for yourself. But it's not all so rosy and easy, because the people who have fallen into this trap, those who control them, won't bring them to me for practice, to my practice. What kind of insane control is this? In other words, it's basically like bringing someone in so that you lose the ability to control them. So, on the one hand, there are practices that allow you to reclaim your will. There is a way to annul all of this and regain your freedom. All of this really exists. But on the other hand, the likelihood that such a person will end up at these practices is very small.
95% of people don't even realize that within them lies a power that grants access to any possibility, a successful business, strong relationships, health, and self-fulfillment. It allows you to hear your soul and remember your true nature, your divine nature. This power is your energy. When it is blocked, you feel tired and upset. But when your energy flows freely and without obstacles, you are full of strength and capable of achieving any goal. Everyone can feel the movement of energy in their body. Are you ready to see this for yourself right now? I've prepared a practice where, in just 3 minutes, you'll become aware of the state of your energy and be able to activate the inner power that has been blocked for many years. The practice is available for a limited time. Right now, follow the link provided below the video and unlock the incredible source of power within yourself.
How can you live life to the fullest, have desires and passions, and at the same time not enter into every contract? How can you make sure all of this is safe? How do you do that? And how can you even tell if you have some kind of contract? Because you see, and you confirm this, the girl says that you can enter into them even unconsciously without saying anything, without agreeing, without performing any rituals.
No, you can create these images in your own internal thoughts, but you are fully aware of what you are doing. You see, if your position makes you replace, so
That is consciously, but just without saying it out loud.
how can you not say it out loud? You say it to yourself internally. You say it in your own inner dialogue. You just don't admit it out loud. But the speech is still there in your head, so it's not all that rosy. And how not to get caught up in this system depends on the person's position. If a person wants someone else to do something for them, if a person is striving for some forces that will provide them with benefits and they themselves are not going to do anything, they will inevitably get stuck in a trap. If a person doesn't want to take on their own responsibility, if they want to hand over the right to make decisions to someone else, if they're frightened and have the impression that they can't handle it, that they don't have the strength, that it's too much for them, that it's simply impossible, in other words, if they're just feeling scared, have lost their sense of direction or lost sight of their goal, they can easily end up in this situation. For example, at first you push through, start a business, open some factories, and then suddenly there's a crisis. You realize that you're down 100 million. And at that moment, you might break. At that moment, you might give up your will. But you might not break. You might say, well, okay, I'll figure something out now. But I'll keep moving forward anyway. I'll keep looking for opportunities anyway. And then you'll find those opportunities and get out of it. Whether it's 100 million or minus 100 million, somehow things will work out. And that somehow things will work out happens to those people who don't break, who don't bend. Those who keep showing up and moving steadily toward their ultimate goal. After all, even Donald Trump, who is now terrifying the whole planet with his decisions, went bankrupt 4 times. That didn't stop him. And it shouldn't stop you either. But if it does stop you, you immediately start looking for someone to shift your responsibility onto, or someone who would do it for you. Well, yes, most likely, you're giving up your own will. Or to put it another way, you will give away your soul. Therefore, if you take responsibility for yourself, if you make independent decisions, if you do not rely on anyone else, if you don't blame anyone for anything and look only at yourself, then yes, you will enjoy this life and reap the results of your efforts. You will have both positive and negative moments, but they don't break you and they don't stop you. Your will remains with you always. If something happens and you try to back out, yes, and shift all the blame. There will be someone who will come and assume full responsibility over you, completely depriving you of your freedom.
Consider this thought. When someone enters into a contract with an entity, they are essentially paying for it with their very own life energy, right? And if a person is a practitioner, really advanced, then it turns out that the entity won't want to leave them because there's a lot of energy. And there is certainly plenty to feed on here.
No, the contract is made not with their energy, but with a specific part of themselves. Let me try to draw a helpful analogy with the physical body. For example, consider mosquitoes. They constantly suck your lifeblood. But just because they suck your blood, you don't lose your sense of self. Because your blood isn't a vital organ, an internal one. Because your blood is something, a part that, even without the mosquito, is being continuously destroyed and then renewed within your own physical body. It is a cycle that happens naturally. It's a process within you that is constantly being replaced. You go to a professional hairdresser, get a fresh new haircut, and some part of you is literally cut off. Hair is also a part of you, but it doesn't bother you at all. A tiny little bed bug, I don't know, constantly feeds on your dead skin cells on an old, dusty mattress. Do you actually suffer because of that? No, you don't care at all. Let it eat. You don't even notice it. But if a doctor comes to you and says, listen, let me take out your kidney and I'll buy you an iPhone for it, this is a true story. It happened in China. And if a person agrees, the second kidney won't grow back. That's already an irreparable loss. He gave away a part of himself. It's not like blood that they took from you for some tests and then it comes back. It's not like hair that you cut off and it grows back. You gave away a part of yourself. And that's not the same thing. But energy is very much like hair. It is like skin that is constantly shedding from our bodies. It is also like blood, where yes, we can lose a certain amount, a reasonable amount, and we can actually manage to do that. It's like sweat that comes out of us eventually. And there are many other things that leave our bodies. We can lose those, it's not a problem. Of course, not in large amounts, but we can. But it's a completely different matter when it comes to our fundamental parts. And this isn't about energy at all, this is about yourself. You give away a part of yourself, you lose a part of yourself, you lose abilities, functions. If, say, they take one of your kidneys, at least you have two, but if they take your heart, that's it, you're done. If they remove some organ that still allows you to keep living, it's no longer the life you're used to. That's why people who give away a part of themselves, the will is an inseparable part of each of us. And they trade it for some benefits, but those benefits never make up for it. Such a loss is never worth it in any way.
All right. Let's do one last thing. How can you protect yourself and how not be tempted by these stories? Because we already understand that we enter into everything consciously, absolutely nothing ever passes us by. That is to say, we fully and consciously agree to the contracts we make. The real point is whether you will be tempted by the allure of it or not.
Extrasensory perception. We need extrasensory perception. Why do we need it? So that we can see what we are doing. Imagine a situation. This example is going to be rather harsh, but it will help explain things. Imagine for a moment that you have been completely paralyzed since birth, and the only thing you can possibly move is your eyes. Everything else simply doesn't move at all, but you are still very much alive. You can't see your own body, you can't move it, and you have absolutely no way to be aware of it. And then someone suddenly comes to you and says, "Hey, let me take something important out of you." You won't even feel anything. You'll fall asleep, wake up, and basically nothing will change for you. So you think, well, what will I get out of it? And for that, you'll get, I don't know, a new TV hung above you so you can watch it. Well, all right, okay. All this happens, there's a TV hanging above you, but damn, somehow things feel worse. It used to be better. You don't understand why. Because just like before, you still can't feel your body, but you clearly realize that it used to be more comfortable somehow. And now something is missing. And maybe, I don't know, they've cut off your limbs, taken out a kidney, removed a lung, but you don't feel it. You only feel the consequences of all this. And look, it's a completely different situation when you are fully aware of your body. You turn your head in all directions. Someone comes up to you and says, "Listen, let me take something out of you." Yeah, and I'll give you money for it. Tell me, what exactly are you going to take? And where is it? What are we talking about here? Tell me, where are you even going? Get out of here. Of course not. When he tells you, "I'm going to cut this out. Right from here, I'll bend this back, break this off, and take it out from there." Of course, you'll say, "No, that's it. What are you thinking? No material benefits can compensate me for that." Although some particularly gifted people even agree to this, they regret it later, of course, but they agree. Extrasensory perception is needed. When you have extrasensory perception, when you can see your own energy, see all your component parts, see how you are structured, and some being comes up to you and says, "Listen, let me take this thing right here, out of you," and you'll say, "Are you serious? I'll suck it up right now and throw it into the seventh gate, so that you never even think about bringing up topics like this with me again. Because I can see that this is a part of me. I see how it works. I see how I regularly use all of this, what it gives me." But if you don't see or feel a damn thing, it's very, very easy to fool you, just like that. Because you don't see. So what should you do? What should you see, feel, become aware of, and perceive? That is exactly what you ought to do. Doing so will provide you with the very highest possible quality guarantees. Everything else, what rules should I follow? My God, we don't even follow the rules that are obvious. Simple rules won't help us, but a clear vision will.
Yes, the good news is that this is a controllable process.
It's an obvious process. When something is obvious to you, there's really nothing much to control. You know, there was a story like this. The surgeon who performed late-term abortions. And then, shortly after that, the revolutionary medical technology of the ultrasound was finally invented. And they showed him on the ultrasound what he was doing. He saw what he was doing. He saw how this human embryo was trying to escape from him, how it was trying to survive, how it was desperately struggling before death, and how he crushed its head with his forceps. He saw all of this. Before that happened, he carried it out in a purely mechanical and automatic way. He couldn't perceive it at all before. But here he saw what he was doing. After that, he refused to perform abortions and left medicine altogether. This is a true story. All of this is right out in the open. A person saw it once, and even then, just on an ultrasound, some spots just crawling across the screen, but that was enough for him. It's the same for you. If you see it even just once, what kind of control, what kind of management, you'll be horrified by what you're doing to yourself at first. And then, little by little, you'll learn to live in a way that you actually enjoy the process, to enjoy this life. When people come to me for knowledge, come to learn specific practices, practice and successfully achieve these impressive results, the very next question they always ask me is, Anton, how do you actually live without destroying yourself? I say, haha, you simply have to train your mind and body. Well, at least now you can clearly see what you're doing. When a person sees what they're doing, they have not the slightest doubt that they can't go on living like this. But if I just walk up to someone on the street and say, hey man or hey lady, you can't live like this, he'll say, hey buddy, you'd better get out of here before you get punched in the face. But when I say to a person, look, let's unlock a new superpower for you right now, and then you'll live with this ability for a while, what will you tell me after that? And that's going to be a completely different conversation and a completely different kind of interaction. That's why when a person reads some scripture, some treatise, even the Bible with its commandments, they're like, do I really need this? I didn't need it anyway. But when he actually witnesses firsthand in the moment his action and the impact of those actions on the energetic level, that's when, yes, he deeply asks the question, how do I live my life so that this doesn't happen? In every single aspect of his life.
Thank you very much. I think we've covered the topic. Friends, you can find all the links to Anton's courses below this video. Go check them out.